أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. Nowadays we are discussing the history of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. Last time I had started with some of the points pertaining to the period of Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam, immediately before the birth of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam and Hazrat Yahya alayhi salam, and then a few years after that. I could understand from the response which did not come, and also the body language of the audience and the participants. I think some of our participants have always have rightly pointed out, and they feel that why we are discussing these things. And I have always been submitting that I am not presenting a particular translation or a particular interpretation of one school or one thought or one person or one opinion. I am just trying to place the methodology how to derive hikmat from Quran, hikmat, wisdom. As an example, again, I try to explain that why I have mentioned these things about 660 BC, 60 years before the birth of Christ and afterwards. Why? Because this is the period of Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered, study the history of Zakaria alayhi salam. About 60 years before the birth of Hazrat Yahya alayhi salam, or say 100 years before the birth of Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam, we find in the Quran that he makes a dua, and in which he tells that I am now grown old, very old, very feeble. So this gives us an idea that what is the period of, or what is the age of Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam. Then Quran requires study in tartil. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. You kindly recall that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at one place in the Quran tells us that the people of Dawud alayhi salam, they were not able to have their own king, appoint or nominate or elect or select, whatever you say. And since at that time the revelation was coming, and in the Quran Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if during the period of revelation, if you ask questions, I will respond to your questions also. At that time, they demand the appointment of a king, and the king is given to them, Hazrat Talut alayhi salam. And then Hazrat Dawud alayhi salam is also mentioned, who plays an important role in the battle. And then as a king. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling these things? Just as a story, just as a qasas, just for sabab, just for khatamul Quran, there is a much bigger purpose. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, apply your mind in the Quran, think about it. Why this story was told. All these things are connected here in Tartil of Quran, which I'm going to again try to explain. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that the Roman Empire was defeated. And soon they would again become victorious. Why these stories? What is its relevance to our life today? Today we say Quran is forever. I should be explaining, according to my very humble opinion, these things in the current prevailing perspective situation. But I try to avoid that because I have seen that, and I have experienced that we are looking at even the political process in our own perspective, in the perspective of our own perception, not on the basis of information. We don't apply mind. So I avoid that. I go back to history. Instead of explaining through the modern political science, I'm going back to the history to explain, although that is also controversial. Here, what is the relationship between these things? One important phrase in the story of Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam takes us into all these details. That is, when Zakaria alayhi salam says, the Quran tells us that for the kafalat, for the guardianship of Hazrat Maryam alayhi salam, the priests were drawing lots. They were not able to decide who should be the guardian of Maryam alayhi salam. Now, this point takes us into all these details which I have discussed, I have pointed out. What is the wisdom to which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing out? Since the things had reached in the days of Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam to the point that they were not even able to decide about the appointment of the Imam of the Masjid. Quran uses the word Masjid. And they were not even able to decide between themselves who should be the guardian. The superpower, the foreign power, imposed its decisions on them. When they demanded the appointment of the king during the period of Dawud alayhi salam, they were not able to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling that they were not able to reach a consensus, resolve their conflict. They did not have the dispute resolution mechanism. That is why they requested, they besieged, they prayed for a foreign intervention, outside intervention, extraneous intervention. And since they were in communication with God directly at that time, they were responded, they were given. And there is a wisdom why Talut was given separately and Daud was given separately. One was the prophet and the other was the king. Here also, the situation tells us that the situation is now worsened. At that time, they were demanding a king. But now the situation had worsened so much that now they were not even able to appoint the king, upon the imam. And now the history tells us that why it happened. And today we are in this situation. I can be connecting with with the situation in Palestine, with the situation in Yemen, with the situation in Pakistan, developing situation in Pakistan. I repeat it, but I avoid that because I know that people are not thinking, that they are holding their views through perception, not through information, not through ground realities, not through what is happening, what is coming up. That is why I go back to history to correlate these things. I'll try to show that what is the problem. I had shown that in 63 BC, before Christ, 63 years before the birth of Christ, which means about, say, 70 years, about 69 years or 68 years before the birth of Yahya alayhi salam. What would be the age of Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam? About, say, 90 years, 100 years, because he says, I'm very old. So this is the period. Now, in 63 BC, because when I projected these things, there was no question. And I could understand from the body language also why I'm bringing these details. There is a wisdom in Quran. Kindly think into Quran. In 63 BC, Roman Republic took Jerusalem. In fact, entire Judea, they were enslaved. Roman Empire had taken over Judea. At that time, the situation was so bad that the Romans appointed, not the Muslims, not the Jews themselves. All the people of the Deen of Ibrahim alayhi salam are Muslims. So those Muslims, whom we call Yehuda, Judea, people of Judea, they could not appoint the high priest, the Imam. It was appointed by the Roman Empire. They were not able to appoint the Masjid committee. What is happening in UK? You must have heard those news, not once, many times, how the police takes over the masjid when the two imams fight, or the people, two factions fight. The masjid committee, Sanhedrin, I'll show that also, was appointed by the Roman Empire. Even they could not appoint the masjid committee. Governor was appointed by the Romans, of course, since they had conquered the area. This is to which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing out, inviting our attention. Learn from Quran. This is happening everywhere. In Afghanistan, after Zahir Shah, after the kingdom of Zahir Shah, they have not yet been able to bring a consensus leader, consensus president or prime minister or anybody. Then the foreign power will come. And then 57, 55 BC, again Zakaria alayhi salam's period. This was a challenge before Zakaria alayhi salam. It was a political challenge to Zakaria alayhi salam, to Isa alayhi salam, to Yahya alayhi salam. They had faced the Roman Empire. 5 districts of legal and religious councils were created. Sanhedrin was one of them. Sanhedrin was the Masjid committee which had lodged FIR against Isa alayhi salam, on the basis of which he was arrested, on the basis of which he was tried, although it was a sham trial. But where will we find these facts? Unless we don't go into the zikr of Quran and correlate with history, with science. This was also appointed by, and then not only this, they divided them. Whenever the foreign power takes over, they divide the people. What did East India Company do? They divided people. They divided territories. And here we find that they divided them into legal districts, into religious councils. This is how they divided them. Syria was divided. Egypt was divided. When the governor was sent to Egypt, there was turmoil, civil rights. What is happening today? Same thing, history repeating itself. But we are not ready to go into these details. This is all the period of Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam. Zikr Zakaria. It is rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Quran, if you read that history and learn from it, there is rahmat for you. You will be able to understand your problems and solve them. They divided them into 5 councils, masjid councils. You can call it. Sanhedrin was one of them. Now 40 BC. I had pointed these things last time, but I could understand that I'm not reaching the minds. I'm not able to get the minds, catch the minds. Jerusalem was captured by the Parthians. Surah Rum tells us that Romans were defeated. This was not first time. It had happened in the history before that, after that, after that, and even after this event, yes, happening. Who were Parthians? They were Iranians. Like those Iranians who had taken over first time Judea. They had conquered Jerusalem. They had enslaved the Muslims, Yehuda. At this time also, Parthia had taken had conquered Jerusalem 40 BC. This was again a period of turmoil, from one enslavement going to another enslavement. This was the challenge before the Jews at that time. And then the person who was ruling, he was able to escape, Herod, the king. And he continued the struggle. Roman Empire supported him. And there was a political move. That person, Herod, the king, he was declared as the king of the Jews in exile. Why he was declared king of the Jews? Nowadays, since about 2 days, why? Something is very viral. Give it a religious touch. You must be knowing this. It's viral on the media. Somebody advised somebody that now in your speech, give it a religious touch. So they gave a religious touch. Roman Empire. They gave it a religious touch. They declared Herod as the king of Jews, so that in order to add the religious fervor, strength, and he was given the support of a Roman general also, military establishment. One corps commander supporting. Full. I've given the names also. Roman deserter Quintus Labienus, general, he supported Herod. And the promise was that if you conquer back Jerusalem, bring it back under Roman Empire, you are the king of the Jews. And this bit worked. This religious touch worked. This support of establishment worked. The support of general worked. They were able. And then he was declared as the Herod the Great. Herod the Great. He was father of Herod Antipas. That will come during the discussion. I had already pointed out that Herod the Great got back Judea and he became the Herod the Great. Now this keep in mind. Now this title, this religious touch, shows that the politics was, the religion was being involved with politics. What is happening in India? Religion, so-called religious thought, right or wrong, misinterpreted or whatever is. Hinduism, not original Hinduism according to Vedas, is not like that. But how one person interprets it, he has incorporated religion into politics. So religion got involved into politics. And then Herod the Great, this title was the major point on which Hazrat Isa alayhi salam was tried. During the course of sham trial, he was not tried. He was not given any sentence. He was not given any punishment because he had disturbed those who were working riba, exploiting, money exploiters, money lenders in the masjid. He was not tried for that. He had done it before also, but he was not tried. This time he was tried. The questions which were put to him before the prefect, before the Pilate, before Herod, they were all about mainly one thing. Are you the king of Jews? Are you challenging the authority of the Herod? And Isa alayhi salam said, their kingdom belongs to God. And the Romans thought that this is threat to the Roman Empire. As Pharaoh thought that when Musa alayhi salam says that there's a Rabb of the Kainat, Rabb of the universe, Lord of the universe, there's a lordship of the universe, lordship of universe belongs to God. So he said that it is a threat to my lordship, to my kingdom, to my sovereignty. And he wanted to punish Musa alayhi salam. He wanted to kill him. This is how the history teaches itself, repeats itself. repeats for those who don't understand like us and who don't think into it, who don't reflect into it. I'm not saying a new thing. I had said all these things last time, but I had said it in a flow, just mentioning. But when I could understand that I have not reached the minds, therefore I am repeating it. Then Herod and Roman generals, they succeeded, they defeated Iranians, and they were able to establish the rule. Now Herod the Great, he is now known in history as Herod the Great, the King of Jews. He was also given the title Herod the Great, Akbar the Great, Alexander the Great. He was given the title Herod the Great because he had defeated Persian Empire. Rome was defeated, but Rome became again successful. This was not first time in history. And then he did one thing. In order to, because religious touch had been given, what he did, the masjid, the only masjid, there was one masjid only in the world, on this planet, which was operational. That is why it's called Masjid 1, Masjid 2, or Temple 1, Temple 2. He named it as Temple Mount, which even today, they use the term Temple Mount. He renovated the masjid. He expanded the masjid. And that came to be known as the Temple Mount of Herod. This masjid was expanded. There's a controversy about Herod, this Herod the Great. Some historians say he was a Jew. That is why he was made the king of Jews. Some people say no, his family members were Jews. Some people say no, he was not a Jew. What this shows is that he may have a semblance, not a practicing Jew, not a practicing Muslim. Today we accept our leaders. They bow before graves. They make sujood to the graves. They violate laws like Herod Antipas. He married a woman on a pretext that she is getting divorced from him, and he married her. What is happening today? But we call them Muslims. So they call them Jews, and he was known as a Jew. And he had given a religious touch. And with that religious touch, that masjid became Herod's temple. And it was after the crucifixion, after the death of Hazrat Yahya Isa alayhi salam, and after the death of Yahya alayhi salam, before that, Caligula, when he became the emperor, he ordered that his statue should be placed in the masjid. Because of the religious touch, that masjid had already become a temple, although that was partly there. But Jews resisted it. They are religiously, they are very, very loyal to their religion. They didn't allow, they sacrificed. They put another statue in the city, in the marketplace. They destroyed it. He made another order. He sent generals to put the statue, his statue, in the masjid. They didn't allow. They died for it. They saved the Tawheed. There will be no statue in the masjid. But I have been raising questions in spite of that, in spite of this zealotry, bigotry. Why masjid was destroyed? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us why. And He is calling those who destroyed it Ibad Lana. So we come back now to the topic. Now then it became the Herod's temple. This is the time when Hazrat Maryam was born, in this turmoil, during this period of turmoil. You have seen the turmoil in your lives couple of years back, a decade back, 2 decades back, how the turmoil came in the life of Muslims, and it continues. Islamophobia or other things, these things, becoming slave of one empire, then the other empire, and then other things taking place. And also, this was the period when Hazrat Yahya alayhi salam was born in 6 BC. He was born in 6 BC. Maryam was born in 18 BC. And then the things worsened to the extent that the prefects, amilin, in Arabic, amil, officers, deputy commissioners, they were also appointed by the Roman Empire. In the period of Dawud alayhi salam, only the king was appointed. And now the time had come when the governor was appointed. You have seen the masjid imam was appointed. Now the deputy commissioner was appointed. Can you realize if the masjid committee is appointed or the imam is appointed by the government? In the newly created Judea province, they created it as a province. And at one place last time I had mentioned that how Syria was divided, how Egypt was divided, how the governor who was sent to Egypt, how he was treated, how the riots took place. Alexandria has been the place of intellectual turmoil of the history. It is the place where Trinity originated, took place, Egypt. Then the Trinity, Christian Trinity, I'll discuss these things, also originated in Alexandria. And then the political turmoil. I have mentioned these things, but I think I may go in detail somewhere. Now, coupled with this was the financial crisis. What is going on today in Pakistan? IMF, our taxation, crisis. This happened at that time. We don't learn what happened. There were riots. Tax census is failed revolt. People went to the extent of revolt. There were a lot of killings. The economic conditions are not good. They were draining out the resources of the country, of Judea, taking away the resources. People were becoming poor and poor. There was revolt. And then during that period, a zealot movement started. This is modern history. When Pharisees, like Sunnis or Essenes, who were mainly following Yahya alayhi salam, Sadducees, you still have in Syria, these were different sects. They were fighting among themselves. And there was nobody to resist the empire, the occupant empire. Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam prays to God, I have become old. Give me a waris who takes over my mission, who takes it forward. He was not asking a waris for his property, who takes over this mission, who faces this situation. And the waris which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him, Hazrat Yahya alayhi salam and Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, both of them, they sacrificed their lives. Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam sacrificed his life. When the battle was taking place, when the war was going on in Jerusalem only, the Jews, the Muslims of that time, they were killed more by themselves, by their own sects, than by the Romans. They were fighting among themselves. And during that situation, the zealots, the Khawarij, we had Khawarij in the civil war. Kharijis, they fought against all of them, that all of you are wrong. It was that period when the zealous movement came up, which incited rebellion, and they added political touch. Now, they had given the Roman Empire, Herod, they had given a a religious touch. Now these zealots gave a political touch to their religion, Labbaik, becoming political. And in this politics, they opposed everyone, existing religious factions. And what was the political touch? Here the political touch was to expel Romans, leave India. The religious movements at that time, even if Khilafat movement, Hijrat movement to Afghanistan, Sayyid Ahmad's rebellion, war for independence, Subhash Chandra Bose, Gandhi even, they all had a political touch. Some people were working in their political perspective, in their religious perspective, own religion, but yet the political touch of all these factions were independence of India. So here also, they gave a political touch, that is to expel Romans from the Holy Empire. Jerusalem, again, in this turmoil, lost its position, its independence. This time, they lost their sovereignty. How? The administration went to Palestine. It was administered from Palestine. When we go towards the end, not today, but when we go towards the end of this series, you will find how Jerusalem, from Jerusalem, these powers, the Christian, the Jews, the Romans, they were expelled, and how Islam was allowed before its conquest, I'm emphasizing. We'll discuss those points. Now here, the administration went to Palestine. I had also mentioned that how the Roman Empire and Roman emperors emerged before the period of Hazrat Yahya alayhi salam and Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. It was not an empire. It was Roman people, and then it became Roman. There were different names up to Jesus, up to Julius Caesar. And after that, it became empire. And the first emperor was Augustus, and then Tiberius. He was the Roman emperor. During that period, Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salam had the toughest time. And he was killed, cut into 2 pieces, hard. Zakaria. Some events in that period, how the events took place there. Hazrat Isa alayhi salam is now on the scene. Hazrat Yahya alayhi salam has been killed. Zakaria alayhi salam has been killed. Yahya alayhi salam has been killed. Now Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, single-handed, he is now facing the situation. He was 28 years of age, about 28 or 30 years of age. Bismarck said that if you are not a socialist before the age of 30, which means if you are not a radical, if you are not a thinker, if you don't have feelings for the poor before 30, then you have no heart. But if you continue to have these feelings, even after the age of 40, then you have no head. Hazrat Isa alayhi salam had a heart. He had emotions. He had a message to deliver. He was a prophet. He had a feeling of compassion for the people. They were being exploited. What were those important events which formed the background for Hazrat Isa alayhi salam's ultimate arrest and taking to, according to them, for the crucifixion? He cleansed the temple. He cleansed the masjid from the merchants who were doing riba business in the masjid, money lenders from the masjid. The Roman history calls it Herod's temple, And our translations in the Bible also call it a temple, but the Quran uses the word masjid because masjid was there. In year 30, when Hazrat Isa alayhi salam was 30 years of age, he came to Jerusalem and he came as Messiah. He was curing the people. Now, the important events in Christianity as a religion, in the history of religion, these are important events. He came to Jerusalem, from Galilee to Jerusalem. Last Supper, just before the arrest. These are important events. The Passion, the entire period of his endurance, bardasht, sabr, how he faced the situation. His Hawaris, his disciples, his colleagues, they betrayed him. One of them openly betrayed just for 30 coins. Even Peter, the history says, most dedicated, reliable, in whose name in Roman Empire, in Rome, you have St. Peter's Cathedral. He went to Rome. His Hawaris, after that, they spread in the world. When he was tried, he was also arrested. They asked him about Isa. He said, I don't know him. 3 times. He denied, I don't know Isa alayhi salam. Then resurrection of Jesus, which is claimed by St. Paul. This is one of the, or rather the most important event in the history of Christianity, and it changed the entire concept, the philosophy of Christianity. How much we have understood, studied. Then ascension of Jesus alayhi salam, that he was taken up. How he was taken up? We have taken the accounts from Bible, mostly from Bible, without understanding the word of Quran. What the ayat says, we'll inshallah, Allah willing, we'll discuss that. Then the other emperors come. I will not devote time on this. I think I will rather stop here. I've taken about half an hour, but I'm just pointing out that these are also important in that period, these emperors, but I'm not going to discuss. Nero, I had mentioned some time back. He came after that. But I'm mentioning these names because they will become interesting when we discuss what happened to the Roman emperors. Anybody, anyone who took part against Isa alayhi salam, against Yahya alayhi salam, against Zakaria alayhi salam, killed them or tortured them, you will find how the history has disgraced them, how history annihilated them, their dynasties, their families, their properties, their power. I'm just exposing some names here. We will discuss this, but I'm telling you that so that you have in mind that this is the period. Vespasian, it was during his period. He was a general when he attacked Jerusalem, the masjid, but he could not conquer. During that period, he became emperor. He went there. And during that period, his son Titus, he was given the charge, he became the general. And he destroyed the masjid. He destroyed Jerusalem. He conquered it. And for that he was awarded. And history does not disgrace him. Why? These are some things, these are some surprising facts of history which needs to be studied. All others are disgraced. Pilate, Herod, Antipas, everyone. But here we find a different treatment of history, from history. If you don't agree with that, yes, conduct your research. Bring that out. Why? I'm not giving my own opinion. I'm not giving you, telling you that this is what it is or it is right. Kindly go into history and study. History is repeating itself today. History, if you want to study the history of Muslims, all our Muslims are Ibrahim salam. But if you take the present names, you just change the names in the civil war of Jews, you will find that it is Muslim history. Our history. Even today, you just change the names, you add the current names, and you will find that this is history, it is repeating itself. How to learn from history? We have to read it, we have to study it, we have to research it. And there is only and only one way to understand Quran, to understand it from its own word. Don't fight on the translated terms. Conduct your own research. So today I presented the same thing which I had mentioned last time. I've taken your time, but I had a feeling that I have not reached the minds. That is why I went like this. Then inshallah, start from here. Next time, Allah willing. After the dua, you can start a discussion if you have any questions. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzat amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك يا ربنا تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك. اللهم ادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الجهل والوهم إلى نور العلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وفضلك عن من سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك على كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us, shower us with your blessings, increase our knowledge, grant us forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Oh Allah, grant them your mercy, make their graves a garden from heaven, and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, remedy our sick. Oh Allah, remedy our son Ma'araj, our daughter Aisha Wani, and all our friends and relatives who are sick. Oh Allah, grant them full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, guide our children, protect them, and make them righteous. Oh Allah, we seek from you all of the good, whether we know it or we don't. And we seek your refuge from all evil, whether we know it or we don't. Oh Allah, we ask you with every name you have elected for yourself, that none of us leave these meetings but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weaknesses have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, adada khalqih wa rida nafsih wa zinata arshih wa midada kalimatih. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, adada khalqih wa rida nafsih wa zinata arshih wa midada kalimatih. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, adada khalqih wa rida nafsih wa zinata arshih wa midada kalimatih. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.